everybody keeps throwing the word around, and we probably wondering what it means. Like, what do we even mean by API? And probably we've been told before in the past that API is a way for different applications to speak to themselves, right? So different applications can speak to themselves using API. And why that might not really give you a good idea of what API really means, maybe it's not definitive enough. That is exactly what an API is. So an API actually allows different applications speak to themselves. We'll talk about what that speaking means. Okay. However, my aim here today is just to describe what APIs are in a way that when we hear of the term next time, we know exactly what's probably installed, what's probably been in view in that particular scenario, and we'll be launching right into it. So I'm going to start by showing us this meme that we've almost certainly seen somewhere before. So I know we've seen this meme somewhere before. All right, so you have this restaurant here, you have the back end, you have the front end, and you have APIs. Okay, so what does this mean? So let's imagine, in this place, let's say you go to a restaurant, your aim there is to eat food. Don't care how they do it, right? Major thing eventually is that you want to eat for whatever reason. Now, for that food to get you, some work has to be done. First of all, some people have to be in the kitchen to make the food, right? To prepare it and make all of those things. And sometimes also you have to be seated somewhere. In fact, it's not like sometimes you have to be seated somewhere. Okay, you have to be in front to have your spoon, your everything that you need to get the food right into your mouth, right in front of you. You have to be seated. And eventually the food is not magically going to appear on your table. Some people have to like bring the food to where you're seated, which is the front end, and that's exactly what it is like. So you have this servers coming around to like give you your food and all. And the interesting thing about this is this, which you are going to really learn by the time we move forward, is the fact that you don't have to necessarily be at the restaurant to eat that food from the same kitchen. So the food from that same kitchen, which is the back end, can still come to you in your house, right? By these guys called the API to transport it there. And this is the beauty of API. So with an API, you can just have a single source where the old data or functionality is coming from. And different applications, different clients can access the same source via the API. So that way, if you want to, let's say, serve various clients, you don't have to build the infrastructure, the backend infrastructure or the functionality for every single one of them. With an API, you can just have the same database, the same server, and then all of the application, all of the servers, all of the clients, rather, your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your website, can access the same server, the same website using that single API. That's the beauty of it. So let's move forward a little bit. So we'll be looking at what an API is, how it works, look at common types, and then common types of API protocol, different from the common types anyways. Then some example which we all use every single time, you probably don't know, and then some of the importance. All right, so what's an API? Like I said before, an API is just a collection of rules or protocol, as the case may be, that describe how computers and programs or softwares communicate with one another. All right, so an API basically operates as an intermediary. Remember those waiters at the restaurant, right? They serve as an intermediary between an application from the client side and a web server, and it facilitates data transfer across the system, and not just data transfer alone. It facilitates the transfer of functionalities from one system to another system. So API, because of the nature, of course, it facilitate development and innovation and makes it easier by allowing apps to simply and securely access data, existing data, communicate them, and also communicate functionality. So that way you don't have to build the infrastructure for every single application you want to build. There are tons of APIs out there. There are tons of data that they are serving, and all you need to do is to connect to the endpoint. And then that same data that has been created already, you can use it for your own application. So you don't have to think about creating data, all of those things. You just have to think about how to make better use of those data and those functionalities. So it facilitates innovation, essentially. And companies can essentially open up their data and functionality to external third party to use, and they can make a lot of money from it. If that is the case, we talk about the importance, or even just help people. So let me give you an instance. Recently, we probably hear of the news that WhatsApp open up their API, right? I'm not sure, I don't know if you remember that. And the interesting thing about that is that you can access, you can use that to, for business purposes, which is mostly what it is. You can connect with people via that and do a lot of things with that. What about the Spotify API? So supposing you are building an application, for instance, you don't need to build your own. You don't need to build your own music player when you can just, use the Spotify API to play music on your application. That's it. That's how simple it is, because Spotify themselves has opened up their own they give open out their own API, and you can connect to the endpoint and use their functionality as well as their data in your own application, and then you can modify it. So it's a way of marketing for them themselves. And sometimes some API firms are actually paid for, and they are not free. And they also make money from it. So you can open your data to external third party, to developers, and then they can use it to build their own application. And basically, with that, through interfaces, services, like, because API is basically following particular protocols, right, and particular interfaces to actually do the work. So by the time you follow those things, you're able to like connect to endpoints, use the data, use the functionality, and then bring them back to your own application. So this is exactly what I've been describing all along. So remember, I said that your API stands as an intermediary. It's connecting to your server or to your database. And then from that, you can serve various things. You can look at this place. Imagine if we had to create the infrastructure for every single thing here. You have to create the database for the application on a tablet, and the web, that's one for the web app, one for the game console, your game console, mobile device, your smart, all of those things. This is very tedious. This is going to waste our time, energy, effort. But what if we can just create an API, an endpoint that connects to the company's data server, and then can serve all of the remaining clients? All these guys here on the right hand side are called clients. They can basically access the same data through this API. So it ensures uniformity, it ensures that all of the data are in one place, and then what you have essentially across all clients that you're serving as an organization is basically what it's yours. It's uniform across the spectrum. And this is just an overview of what an API is. So now, how does it work? So I'm just going to really run through it. Basically, the way it works is this. Remember, an API is an intermediary. So all you need to do is, as the client, let's say from a web browser or from your phone or from your tablet, you make a request. All right. When you make a request, maybe via a URL or URI, that is Uniform Resource Identifier. That is going to link to a specific resource. And the resource can be anything, basically. All right, can be an HTML page, can be let's say a list of music. It can be any file format, essentially. So that is the resource, right? So once you make a request via that URL, so it's going to locate the resource, and then it's going to send your request. And then that is going to make you do something with your request, and then send back the response, essentially. So the request you might send can be sent through the body or the header. So let me give you an instance. So supposing you are registering on a page, all right? Let's say the page is using WordPress API for login, or another form of API for login. Right? You don't have to create your own login and database. You can just use an API, the WordPress API, and then you input your data. Most of the time, your data is going to be sent through the body of the to make it very secure, because you're probably sending sensitive information. And then once you send that, it's going to take it alongside the request you just made, and then send it to the server, through the API to the server that is going to. And if it's a data, like maybe you're registering for instance, the server is going to ensure that it is saved in the database. And then it's going to give you a response that, oh, wow, you've been registered successfully. Now you can log in, something like that. I'm pretty sure you've come across that before. That is exactly what it is. And sometimes you can also send it as a parameter, as a query string. So let's say you want to search for something on Google, for instance. You enter your what's an API? You enter it into the search bar, and then you click send. When you check the URL, you're going to see exactly what your strings are going to see on the URL, and that is like sending as a parameter, essentially. That is going to also send the data, to wherever it's going to, and bring back some responses to you. Or let's say you are on gg.com or on gmail.com, and then you search for iPhone 13 Pro Max, something like that. So it's going to take that those keywords, and then you're going to look through their entire resource, maybe from your phone or your website. They're all connected to the same, using API essentially connected to the same database. And then you can get to see the available product that matches your search essentially. So you make a request. That's the most important thing. As a client, maybe from your browser or your phone, you make a request and it is sent through a URL to the server. And then that exactly, after receiving it, it's going to do something, make some communication maybe to the database or wherever it is happening, and do the request basically, and then going to send you a response, maybe as a text, as JSON, or what to do. So this is a general representation of what I've also been talking about. So on the right hand side of the screen, you have the client, okay, and then on the left hand side you have the host servers, and then in the middle, right in the middle, you have the APIs. Okay, so now you make a request, it goes to the server handles the request and send you a response. As simple as that. All right. So the request can be made through also certain protocols like HTTP or SMTP or FTP, depending on the type of API that we are looking at in this case, which we still look at in a minute. So now this is Postman. This is a tool we use to test APIs to see if they're working. So now this is basically what really happens and what we use to everything you do on your phone. This way, most of this is basically the structure of what it really looks like. So here you have something method, you have API call URL, then you have the data return, and then just at the top of that data return, you see something like status code 200 OK, none of those things. So this is what happened. Okay, this looks like your Google search bar, right? And then you input the URL. You can see HTTP and then some strings there, API/product. So this is making a call to this particular address. This is the local host, okay? And then you are trying to access this resource, the product resource. All right. Now, if this is a RESTful API, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you need to you need to specify the method you are using. Okay, if you want to retrieve data, we use a GET request. If you want to send in data, you use a POST request, right? Here we want to get in some data. We want to get in the product. Okay, so this is going to get all of the data. Now we only have one, so it's returning one. So it's going to get all of the data in the database, right? So we send a GET request, and then this is going to go through this address and look for it, and then send a response. So it sends a JSON response right here, as we see. Supposing we are creating a new one, we use a POST request. I'm going to talk about that to send, and then to send a request, and that is going to basically create it and probably return the created item, or return all of the created items, or just send a string that your product has been created successfully, and then you're going to have a status code. And this is basically how it works. So I'm going to send a request via the URL using a method, and then I'm going to get a response. Simple as ABC. So let's move on. Okay, these are the status codes that you can have. I just want to make a point about that. So if it's successful, you have 200 to 204. So okay means successful, you have a response. 201 is created. Then some other ones. If it is there's an issue with your request, you're going to have 400 now. So bad request, unauthorized. Let's say it has to do with authentication, because sometimes you need to be authenticated to access the resource. You have to do login, for instance, to be able to add a product to your cart on your Jumia, right? So you can't really add to your cart on Jumia without you logging in, because it has to get your ID, right? So these are like unauthorized. So then if there's a server error, if there's a problem with the server, then you're going to have 500, 599. So we can just check more on that later. So what are the types of API before we just move to the type of API protocol? So we have open APIs, very common ones, open weather API. You probably have used them a lot of time if you're a developer. So these are APIs that are free, open source, and you can use essentially. Partner is just like two different organizations using together. Let's say you are a bank, and then you want to send on your bank account, for instance, you want to send, let's say you're using GTB, you want to send money to Kuda Bank. Your bank doesn't have Kuda Bank details, right? But then somehow you're going to input the person's account number and a bank name, and then it's going to get the details for you, right? It's going to tell you that this is the name and this is the account number, and then it's going to ask you to confirm, right? If you can't find it, it's going to tell you there's no user like that, something like that. So that's basically it's what it is. So just make a request. They don't, UBA or GTB don't have to have the data of CUDA bank. They just need to make a request through their own API, and then they get the data from them, and then they do the transfer. Easy. Private, maybe paid. This ones most times are paid for. You have to like pay for them to access them, and then composite. Now, imagine if you have to make multiple, maybe for your application, you need to make multiple requests to different endpoints. That could be very stressful. So what Composite API does is that with just one single endpoint, you can actually access multiple, with one single request, rather, you can access multiple endpoints, right? Which is a very good innovation in itself. So now let's really go to the big deal here. Types of API protocols. Now, okay, let's just go along to it so that we understand better. So now the first I will talk about SOAP. So probably now the two most popular ones are just SOAP and REST, but that's not all. I'm going to mention four, but I'm going to basically dwell on SOAP and REST. So simple object access protocol. It is a protocol. It is a type of extensible markup language based API, XML-based API. So it allows you to send requests via HTTP. Now I showed us HTTP requests before, right? But not just HTTP, also SMTP, which is simple messaging transfer protocol. The way you send your emails, so your emails are SMTP, okay? And also it helps you send via XTP to file transfer protocol. So now the thing with SOAP is that it is a protocol, so it is a standard, it is a standardized method, and you have to like adhere to that standard. So it is really secure, although it is for instance, some of the data that are sent back, that are returned, are not readable by humans. So that might just be the downside of it. But if you really want to work with an API you want to have the API that is very, very secure and follow a standardized rule, then you want to go for SOAP. Then you have representational state transfer protocol, which is by far the most popular. All right. And this is not a protocol. It is a pattern. It is just a design, an architectural principle. So there is a list of criteria that you have to fulfill. So once you build the API to fulfill those criteria, then it is said to be RESTful API. All right. And essentially, RESTful API is send a request via HTTP only. All right. And then you use those action words like get, put, delete, and all to send those requests. Don't send it via SMTP as in the case of SOAP APIs. So once you build it and then adhere to those principles, then you call it RESTful. So I mentioned this. So you send your request via HTTP. You can send it as a text, plain text, as JSON, and then you get a response back in JSON or in text. But majorly, JSON is like the commonest form. Even here, the one I showed us before, the response is in JSON here. So JSON is the JavaScript object notation. And the reason why JSON is usually the most popular and probably acceptable is the fact that even though it is JavaScript object notation, it is language agnostic. It's not dependent on a particular language at all. Once you get the request, you can pass it with any basic language, maybe PHP, Python, JavaScript, probably. Once you get that data, it's easy to like use it, manage it with the language, with the server-side language that you are handling, and then you can use it with that. So it's the most popular format. So now this, I'm going to just really rush through this. So these are the criteria here. Now the first is that it must have a URL. So it has a use uniform interface. So there must be a URL, right? Like the one we saw before, localhost /API/product. So it's going to locate that, it's going to go to localhost, all right? It's going to look for API, all right? And it's going to look for products. Then going to grab that, go to that resource and do whatsoever that is there. Maybe grab a file or do whatsoever. So there must be a uniform interface. And then it has to be client server based. And what this simply means is that you must have a client at one hand, you must have the server at one hand, and then the API is just writing in between, like what I also showed us before. And the way you make that request is through HTTP. Another thing is that the server must be stateless. The server must not have a state. And what do we mean by state? So state is basically keeping a record of what is going on right now on the application. So if you log in, for instance, you have a state. Your application basically like recognizes you. But that should be on the client side. It shouldn't be the same on the server side, right? So the server side information must be stateless. Also, it has to be catchable for basically managing data and ensure optimization. I've discussed catching here before. So catching is basically just to reduce the workload on our database. Let's say every single time you want to send a request to the same, you want to send the same request. You don't have to always access the database. If it has been sent before, you can just catch it, and then you can always access that particular catch if it is the same request that you are making. So it has to be catchable. Also, the system has to be layered, different layers, and then finally it has to be code on demand. Even if you can, if your response can be static files, that is fine. But then it can also be very dynamic ones, the ones that can actually be used for some other things. So these are basically the criteria to be RESTful. And yeah, it doesn't have to. The major thing is that your application has to like fulfill all. This is really, but majority of these criteria has to be fulfilled before the API can be considered RESTful. So these are the methods we use to do the transfer. Post we create. Let's say you want to create an account. Post request. If you want to get or read data, get request. If you want to update the data, put request. Let's say you want to update your profile, for instance. So use the put request to update it, and delete will just remove it from the database. Simple as that. That's why I know RESTful APIs are very lightweight and very simple, very fast. So let's so we have our uniform URL here, right? Then we are making a call, okay, via HTTP using an action tag here, get request, because we want to get data, all right? So then we get a response. This is a status 200 okay, and then we have a JSON response return, and this is it. So here, let's say I'm using PHP for instance. I can change this to a PHP array, and then from there I can just say hello, welcome, Suchan. Okay, I can use that. Okay, this is a product, anyways. I can just put that. How they design their. So basically, we just fill in the front end details with this particular response from the server. So these are the many other two. I just want to talk about this. So this XML, I'll say, so it's very similar to SOAP. It's just that it uses a specific format of XML instead of the in SOAP. SOAP uses a proprietary one, which I'm going to talk about. All right, but this one uses so you see the same XML, but this one uses JSON, JavaScript object notation. But by far the last one I mentioned, and these are the differences. So the major difference I've mentioned some is the fact that first of all, SOAP is a protocol and not a principle. That's one thing. SOAP is a protocol and not a principle. And the other one is that REST is a set of principles, it's an architectural design basically. And then REST uses XML or JSON. This one uses this WSDL for communication essentially, and then it does that over SMTP, FTP, and and also HTTP. But REST only uses HTTP. Then I've mentioned this before that it also uses the remote procedure call method for transfer, and this one just does service via the HTTP essentially. You are welcome. So now another thing is that the data return here is not essentially readable by humans in terms of SOAP, but in terms of REST, it is readable. Like when we saw them before, the JSON response we saw them before. The transfer is only it's HTTP in REST, but you can use SMTP and REST. So, right. So what are the examples of API? Universal login systems. Google, Facebook. How many of us are tired of creating multiple accounts in multiple places? And then you just see connect with Facebook, you just click on that. Connect with Google, you just click on that. So what is exactly happening there is that Google is just sharing your information with them. So you don't have to do that. You don't have to stress yourself in creating new ones. Google has your information, you can fill it up with them. And then third-party payment processing, you go to an app and then you can pay with Stripe, with PayPal, with a MasterCard API. Travel booking comparison, Google Map API. After two, Twitter, let's say, Bolt and other applications, let's say Uber, use Google API essentially to do their work. Twitter, you can also get to it, and Twitter has the API open. Also, we have WhatsApp open, the API. Spotify has API open. So now, what are the importance? So far, from what I've mentioned, one thing you have mentioned is the fact that you can easily collaborate using APIs. You can easily collaborate. So then is there innovation too? So you want to create anything, you don't have to think about creating every single thing, right? You can use API to get those important things and then just add your own to it, right? It's easy because the API will give you the data you need and your own is just to make it better. The data monetization, you can make money from API. A lot of people do. There are a lot of paid API out there that you just subscribe to. And then security. So you are sure that data you're getting is secure. Let's say you are using WordPress login, what's it called? Login API. You don't have to do the validation, all those client side, server side, those work. You don't have to do that. Just connect, send the data, boom, you're good to go. And that is it about API. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you very much for my team. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. Hello.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
You can go ahead.
All right, Semeton, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Sincerely, I really learned a lot and can really say one or two things about API now. So I want to ask you, can you, you mentioned when you're talking about the types, you mentioned the open, private, and a partner and some other things like that. Can you explain the composite API? Is it like he is somehow complex that he can do some like multidisciplinary functionalities or what? Can you please explain it better? Composite. Thank you.
So the basic thing about composite is that, so let's say most times for you to actually, let's say, build an application very well, you need multiple endpoints, all right? So let me give you this instance. Let's say you want to get particular Instagram pictures from a location, all right? Let's say, because you can do that, you can actually get data like the Instagram API that you can connect to, right? So you can get, let's say, look like pictures from that were posted in Lagos State, right? So how do you want to do that? So first of all, it means you need two kinds of API, right? You need a Google Map API to get the location, let's say the latitude and the longitude from that location, right? And then you now want to use that particular longitude and latitude and then infuse that data in the Instagram API, okay? So you have to get the Google own first, then pass it into the Instagram, and then that will now use it to now get you the images, which are not going to get. So imagine if you now want to do something that require you to move from one API to another one, to another one, to another one, to another one, to another one. That can really get stressful, right? And that is the point of composite. With composite, with one request, you can like access multiple endpoints and get every single thing you need. Exactly. Just one request.
Yeah, that is clear. Thank you so much.
Do we have any other person with a question?
Yes, Semeton, I have a question. You mentioned something about login Google stuff. Though can you hear me? So I've been trying to understand what API is, to have full understanding of what it is, but not really have a full understanding of it. But from what you said, that login, Google, Facebook stuff, so it sounds very complicated to me. So I want you to, I think if you can at least elaborate it more, what you mean by login stuff.
And please don't use terminologies, use things that we use every day so that we can get something that that we use every day. All these terminologies, they're not the type I called. Thank you.
All right. Okay, that is fine. So I'm going to use the login and something else again. All right. So, okay, login, universal logins. All of us do it, right? Now, the thing is that whenever you want to register on the page, the architecture is almost the same for every one of them. They will need your name, right? They will need your email, right? They will need your address. They will need your age. They will need your date of birth and all of those things. Then we'll create a password, right? So now,
Yeah.
what we now have right now is that imagine if you were to register, because right now everybody is on maybe like 10 different platforms that they have, and you have to keep remembering the password and all of those things. Okay, so the what universal login is doing is that you don't have to register afresh every single time you are going somewhere. So what you need to do is authorize one app that you have registered before to share those data you put there with your application. Do you get? So now you've registered with Google. Google has all of the details, your address, your name, your phone number, your date of birth. So now you are registering, let's say, on another platform. What you are saying is that if you have to connect with Google, when you say yes, you're saying I'm authorizing my Google account to share all of my data with them. And that is all.
Okay, just like when you have a GitHub account, now you want to log into Stack Overflow, and Stack Overflow is asking if you can use login via GitHub this thing.
GitHub, exactly.
Account.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's still the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Now be the
So
plenty
GitHub,
grammar where you dey speak.
Okay, so back to you. So, but you do transfer on a regular day, right?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Okay, good. And you have a particular bank. And most times you don't even send to your bank. You send to another bank, right?
Sure.
So now, how do you think that works? So let's say you use GTBank and you want to send to Polaris Bank or Kuda Bank or FCMB. All right. So now, GTBank does not have FCMB data. They don't have FCMB have their own data. GTB has their own data. But somehow they're going to send money from your own account to that account. So how does it work? It works via API. So at that point, I asked you to input the recipient's account number and bank details. So what it's going to do is going to send those two data you just sent now. It's going to send it via an API. Okay. You know, remember I said the API is going to be sent through a URL, right?
Yeah.
It's going to locate a resource. That resource is the FCMD resource. So it's now going to send it to the name and the account number, and then it's going to send it to that resource and compare it with their own database that they've opened up already. And then if it gets a match, it's going to now return it and now asks you that, oh, it is so. Do you want to confirm? And then you say yes. And then it's now going to send the money now that you confirm is the same person via that URL, maybe another URL to send the money. And that is what an API is. So they don't need to they don't need to have all the databases of all of the different banks and say, oh, we want to send money to Polaris. Let's quickly check it here. That would be very stressful. All they need to do is to connect with Polaris using their own API to their own database and then get that data and then do the necessary things. So if you enter a wrong number and it goes in and doesn't say any number that is matching, it's going to tell you that you should check again or try again or something like that. And that's the way it works. That's basically an API. So they are communicating with themselves, sharing data within themselves, and everything is going on fine.
Hey, you just made me smarter in front of my non-techie friends. I will do like Guru now because I know API. Thank you.
Semeton.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, good morning. So I'm not asking a question. I just want to confirm. I just started studying about API, so I want to know if I'm on track. And in less technical terms, so let me explain. So API is basically, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So using the Google Map example, so basically, if I want to build an app for Bincom and I want to put on a map the address on how to get there, the directions, I'll need an API to do that. So for the less technical people, and what that means is that because Bincom does not have the resource on its own, it's not going to go and start looking at how do you get to this center. It's not going to just start going around Lagos and drawing the map on its own. It's going to use, Google already has the map of Lagos. So what Bincom does is that they borrow from Google, like they need the API to be able to access that Google's resource. So that's how APIs work, yeah?
Yeah, basically, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Samuel.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope to work with them soon. So I've been studying.
Semeton,
That's the spirit.
now I know that I have an API guru around me, so I don't need to worry anymore. So I can just anytime.
All right, so thank you guys.
Martin, well done. Well done for breaking API for
Thank
them.
you.
So basically, just to shed more light on what you have said, you have actually done very done well by breaking it down in a layman term.
Be very
Basically, API
honest.
intermediary between database and particular source. So you request for something that you don't have, and you can actually access it through the API. Something has a book. I don't have a book, but I need something book. Or something can share his book with me through the use of API. So that's any other question?
I have one last question. Look, Semeton is every okay. So let's say maybe every app or a particular. Let me say, for example, now I create a particular app now that solve a particular problem. Is it every app that can become an API eventually for another app? You get my point? Can you answer that?
Yeah. Once you have data, you can basically create an API for them. In fact, the way it works these days, most organizations starting up try to build their infrastructure in form of an API. So let's say we are building an application, right? So let's say building the backend. I can just build it right from the start as an API, such that eventually it doesn't matter what the front end team are doing. We will always access the same resource that I've created every single time. So it doesn't matter the technology they're using to build it. So let's say they are creating with React or with Vue or whatever. Once I create my own backend and I have the what's it called now? The endpoint. I just share the endpoint with you and then you are good. Just use the endpoint as you like. That's all. So yes, it is. Every single one. Essentially what you are sharing is data and functionalities. So if you have enough data, enough functionality that is beneficial, you can open it up for other people to access that same thing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so Patrick.
Okay. Nuruddin, just to, I don't know, clear you a little. For instance, you built a very nice system and maybe, I don't know, but then a very nice website or something, and you didn't build an API, just merge everything together. And you want to build a mobile app from that for the same system, maybe a web for e-commerce or whatever stuff it is. But now you've joined you had a website before, so you began with a website, so you already made everything together. You didn't create an API. So now to build a mobile app, you're also going to how do I put it now? You won't have the back end there. You won't have the data you did. But if you had created an API such that okay, if it's websites, I'll just plug to it. Just like socket and plug. You want to plug power from a particular source, carry your socket, your laptop and plug it, receive power. You want to plug your phone, you can also remove that one and just plug it. You don't have to remove it. You have you have multiple outlets. So that's how it works basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't forget say you be taking now. I think in the KD you do. I don't forget say you say be taking. Know this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sametin. Thank you everyone for joining today's KD. We've learned a lot, even myself.
Patrick, sorry. I want to say something. See the way we had time to listen to 17 and we all gained something. Is it not because that's 2 people every day are giving so short? We are not learning anything, I'm just saying if it's something we can suggest to management to make it 1 person, it's better. I've learned a lot today. Yesterday, that guy that spoke, I'm sure you would have said much more, but there was no time.
I agree to it.
Yeah, you actually rushed.
I agree to
what
that.
if people shorten their presentations?
You will gain much.
And we gain every day now.
I like as I gain. This the way I gain today, I like I'm like this. Make I gain like this.
Okay.
I
Shorten,
you understand.
suggest
shorten presentation
let's see. I
the
guess.
only problem, the
Please
only
suggest to.
extend the time.
Yeah, it's better. So that I'll be feeling like
I don't know
a
about the
serious
time.
techie where my friends are. This
I don't know
API
about
did
the
not
time,
hear
but
words today.
it's good. Okay.